Are you feeling overwhelmed, stressed out, and frazzled as a homeschool mom? If so, this book is for you. It is time for our Homeschool Mom Book Club chat about the book Teaching from Rest by Sarah Mackenzie. This book has been the #1 influence on my own personal homeschool journey and helped me to learn how to create a more peaceful and restful homeschool. This was the third in a series of books that we read over the summer to kind of gear us up for the start of the new homeschool year. In June, we did The Call of the Wild and Free by Ainsley Arment, and in July, we read through Becoming Mom Strong by Heidi St. John. I will post links to both of those two videos in the description below. I am going to go through and just share some of my big takeaways, and then I'm gonna post discussion questions in the comments below. Please participate. It's really fun to be able to interact with you guys by replying to each of those questions in that comment section below. Let's dig into this book. On page 4, she said, "Rest is trusting that God's got this, even if I'm a mess." Even if I'm not enough, even if I mess up every day, because I do. I mess up all of the time, and I'm sure that we all do. This peace doesn't come from my efforts. It comes from our faithfulness to what God has called me to do or called you to do. And when we choose to be all in with that and follow whatever that is that He's calling us to do, then we can have that peace that surpasses understanding, that can be there when we are struggling or going through hard times, that He is the source of that peace, and that's where we find our rest. Going on page 8, she said, "Much of our anxiety in homeschooling could be sidestepped by simply acknowledging who we are trying to please. Are we focused on what the world says, or what that random stranger says to us, or about the unsupportive in-law who doesn't understand why we're doing this? Are we trying to please them, or are we seeking first to please the Lord through our homeschool process? If we can learn to have confidence in the fact that He has called us to this and that He has equipped us for this, when we can fully just own our decision to homeschool and not let the naysayers have their say in your life and kind of dictate your sense of peace and your ability to do this, then that really helps to kind of quiet those discouraging comments that people might say. On page 9, she said, "God is not demanding I be successful on my own. He's calling me to be faithful and to trust Him for the results, which may not look like what I was expecting. Success in God's eyes may not always look like the success that we're seeking, but if we're faithful, we will know His peace and rest in our studies and efforts." What more success could we want? We are living for an audience of one. If you are a believer, we are not here to perform for the world. We are not here to prove our abilities, to prove our worth. We are here to please the Lord. And if we are following Him in faithfulness and obedience to what He has called us to in this homeschooling journey, then really that is all that matters. On page 15, she said, "We are weary because we forget about grace. Remember your true task. Surrender is everything. Bring your loaves and your fish, even if you think them completely insufficient. They are insufficient. You are insufficient, but His grace is not." And that kind of just drives home the point that we have to just bring Him what we have, even as meager as it is, as little talent as we have, as little patience as we have, as little knowledge as we have. We offer it up to Him with an open hand, and we say, "Lord, it's yours. Do with it what you will." And when we choose to trust Him for the outcome, as opposed to trusting on our strengths that fail frequently, then that is where we can find that peace in the midst of this process. So question number 1, what is it that you need to surrender to God and say, "Here it is, it's yours, take it"? and use it? Drop your answer in the comments below. Okay, in part 2, where she's talking about how curriculum is not something that you buy. I love this right here. If we started thinking about school in terms of encountering certain ideas and mastering certain skills rather than finishing a particular book or covering material, we would free ourselves to learn far more than we can by binding ourselves to a set of published resource. Our children are growing every day. We need to measure our success by our child's growth, not just by the fact that we finish a curriculum or we get a certain number of things checked off in a day. Because so much of real learning happens in the discussion that goes on after you read something together, or the conversations that happen even when you're not doing schoolwork, that something might come up later and then your kid has a light bulb moment where they make the connection between something you talked about a few days ago and something happening in the world. And then you have that deep, heartfelt discussion about it. That is where true education takes place. When our kids are wrestling with these ideas and kind of learning it and making it their own, then we can find satisfaction in that and find confidence in that they are growing there, and that is enough. And that mindset, let me tell you, is so freeing. On the next page, she goes on to say, whether or not you finish your curriculum by May, get through all the lessons in the book, or do as much as you set out to do, doesn't really matter, especially if you are really covering material while diminishing your child's love of learning. Pacing doesn't matter if you're sacrificing mastery and love for truth, goodness, and beauty. So with this kind of in mind, question number 2, what would your ideal homeschool day look like if you could put these things into practice? She starts talking about different ways to simplify your curriculum and the things that you're focusing on learning on. And number 1, she said, do less. We learn so much more when we can choose less to focus on and go deep on those few things. We can learn to own it for ourselves. And that really happens when we find something that we're interested in and go deep on that thing versus just cruising through the curriculum for the sake of getting those things checked off. It really, it's night and day, the difference in how much learning actually takes place. Number 2, she talked about integrating the concept of kind of cross-curricular subjects or unit studies in the homeschool world, where you can find a topic and have different subjects kind of all involved in the same topic, where you might learn about a historical fact and then write a report about it and talk about the grammar and that kind of stuff. So you're getting language arts as part of your history, and doing those things together can sometimes then free up some of the stress of having to go through so many different curriculums to cover all of the subjects, and then they're all just disconnected and nothing fits and makes sense. It can be really valuable to find something where you can bridge those things and kind of make those things work together. I have a video that I can link here that's about how we have done some of our unit studies in the past. And then the 3rd thing she said was to understand the limitations of published resources. She says those printed resources you use are there to help you teach your students. Remember, the published resources are to be wielded by you, not to rule over you. It's kind of cliche, but not be slave to the curriculum. Not be so focused on the curriculum that kind of trumps your relationships and other things and letting life happen. But if you can learn that the curriculum is there to guide you and to assist you in your educational process, not to be a dictator telling you what you have to do when, that is a key factor in creating this peaceful environment that I think we all would like in our homeschool. And then the 4th one was to bake in review time. She's talking about setting aside time to assess how your homeschool is going, how your curriculum's going, and all of those things, and make changes if things are just not working. And I have a video here as well that's about how to kind of assess your curriculum and see if it's actually a good fit for your family. The 5th thing is to remember the point. She will often find more experienced homeschoolers and ask them what is the most important part of homeschooling. She said, they tell me to focus on relationships to help my children preserve wonder and perceive truth, and to do each day's work as diligently as I can. I love how she put that. That just means to be like a motto on the wall. This is what our goal should be for each day. Focus on relationships, help my children to preserve wonder and perceive truth, and to do everything with all my heart. Do it the best that we can, and teach our kids to do the best that they can at what they're doing too. Then that would be a successful homeschool. Question number 3. Were any of these 5 things the light bulb moment for you? Drop that in the comments below. She goes on to talk about how to simplify your schedule. The number 1 thing to do is to start with the time budget, which is figuring out how much time you have each day that you can actually focus on schoolwork, and then fit the schoolwork that you can into that space that's available. Secondly, going along with it is to insist on margin, to make sure you are not planning too much in your day and not leaving any space for life to happen. We need to make sure we have extra time allotted than what we think it's actually going to take to get our schoolwork done. And then the third one was to break out of the mold. Kind of this idea that we don't have to treat our homeschool the same way a public school might be with their yearly calendar or their daily schedule. We can make it fit what is best for our family. And then the fourth one was to begin a habit of morning time. And this, guys, this has been amazing in our homeschool. I will link a video here that I did recently about what our morning time loop schedule is and kind of how you can create your own. And then the fifth one was to remember whose time you're on. Hint, it isn't yours. She said in here that the best way to shed frustration and angst about the schedule is to simply remember that the time isn't yours to begin with, it's his. We have to be willing to trust that whatever comes up throughout the day, it's by his design, something that he has placed in front of us as a means of teaching us to slow down, or teaching us to trust in him, or teaching us to practice patience. Can I get an amen? And there's so many things that can come up that we can get frustrated over because our plans aren't working out the way we expected them to. But when we can look at it being his timing and his plans, then that takes a little bit of that stress and anxiety off of us. On page 51, she said, what if instead of trying to make the most of our time, we worked harder at savoring it? We can all benefit from slowing down a little bit more and not feeling like we have to just do all of the things. Because when we try to do all of the things, it certainly causes me a lot of stress, and I bet it does for you too. So question number 4, how can you slow down and savor more? Page 56, she said, a few years into homeschooling, one thing is abundantly clear to me. A peaceful and happy mother is the real key to successful homeschooling. I don't know about you, but I have certainly experienced that when I am in a bad mood. If I'm grouchy, if I'm impatient, if I'm short with my kids, that attitude spills over into all of them. They start fighting more, arguing more, they get frustrated more, they have less patience. The mom, as hard as it is to hear, is going to direct the tone of the homeschool. So we need to be prepared to set the mood and the tone for our homeschool in the way that we want it to go. And if things start to go haywire, to stop, to just put a pause on it and do something different and not force it. I'm linking a whole bunch of videos here, but I have another one that I made when I had a really bad day. And I failed tremendously in this area. And some of the things that I do to kind of get myself back together and pull it together and help us to kind of reset our day. So check that out if that's something that you struggle with. She said, figure out what drives you and then let your kids shine within the atmosphere that you create. Trying to be something that you're not, trying hard to provide your kids with the education that the homeschooler next door is giving hers, will burn you out and make you want to quit the whole project entirely. If we are trying to just recreate what we see on Pinterest or what we see on Instagram and thinking that it's gonna work for us automatically, that is just a straight path to frustration and feelings of inadequacy. The thing is here is to focus on what you are good at and what you enjoy, and finding a way to work those things into your homeschool and creating a homeschool that is something that you truly love. Because if you're excited, it's contagious. They're gonna want to learn about what it is that you're excited about too. What is something that you love that you can incorporate into your homeschool? On page 69, she said, if by the grace of God, we can manage to remember that our children are all made in His image, and more importantly, if we can treat them as such, despite the mess and the chaos, then we will really be able to teach from rest. We have to learn to look at our children as created beings, complete with their personality, their gifting, their interests. All of those things are specifically and uniquely designed by God for a reason and a purpose. And while at times it can be frustrating and we don't understand why our kids do what they do or say what they say or don't do what they should do, if we can look at them as whole beings that God created the way that they are, then we can try to change our mindset to focus on the positive things about them and try to see how those things that are struggles can actually be a strength for them if we can teach them how to hone those in the right direction and be able to teach our kids how to use their giftedness to serve Him and to serve others. Then that is where true joy in this process of homeschooling can happen. On page 71, she started talking about Jesus' miracle at Cana, where He turned water into wine and He had the people fill up these pitchers to the brim with water. They brought the water, they followed in obedience, and then He did the miracle. She said, Andrew Kern often reminds us that cultivating intellectual growth, nurturing our creativity, diving into good books, learning new skills, working refreshment into a busy routine, that is how we fill our pitchers brimful of water. We need to fill ourselves up so that the Lord can do the miracle, so that He can then do the work in us. It's important for our kids to see us being interested about learning too, and finding ways to grow ourselves and improve ourselves. And then when they see us modeling that, it's much more likely for them to want to imitate that behavior as well. Question number 6, what can you do to start filling your pitcher to be that example for your kids? So question number 7, what was your biggest takeaway? I'm super curious. Please drop that in the comments below. If you want to hear about my own personal struggle and how I went from this place of wanting to completely give up this homeschool thing and now have turned around to absolutely loving it, and I would never do anything different, click on this video right here. If you haven't read this book, make sure you get it. It is so worth it. I read every single summer to kind of get me in the right mind frame for starting our school year. Thanks so much for watching today. Be blessed. Bye-bye.